Hi there, and welcome to the Kingdom Sexuality podcast. We're Paris and Alana, friends who have a heart for intimacy and long to uncover God's truth and design for sexual freedom within marriage. Welcome here. So welcome to our first ever bonus episode. Merry Christmas. Season is upon us. And this episode is all about how you can stay and remain intimate throughout this really busy season, which is a struggle. Like some of this is a struggle when you're not even busy. So you're like, well, how am I supposed to do this now when it's ultra busy? But don't worry, we will give you some suggestions on how to make your sex life a priority, even when the rest of your life is also really busy because it's Christmas time. So
yes,
buckle up. We're just going to have a conversation and just chat through this because I think this is important. And there were so many of you, when I put the questions box on Instagram, so many of you wanted to talk about this. Like, how can we do this? You know, we're staying at my in-laws over the holidays. How can we still have sex even though we're not at home? When we're traveling, you're going through airports, you know, families coming to see us, sleeping arrangements aren't ideal. You're over at families. How can we still have any sort of intimate life? So if this is your question, we're hopefully going to answer it for you today.
Love it. I want to start off by saying this one piece of advice. The best thing you can do actually two pieces of advice, because I feel like you can't do one without the other. When you are going through a busy season, through the holidays, through travel, whatever it may be, is definitely communicate your desires and your needs to each other first and foremost, so you're on the same page. And then secondly, get adventurous with each other. I feel like especially when things may be out of the norm for us, we can just tend to play it safe, quote unquote, instead of getting a little bit adventurous and doing things that maybe you wouldn't typically do together intimately. So I want to encourage you guys to do those two things, to start thinking that way, because you'll probably surprise yourself through it.
Yeah, absolutely. To be able to, like, even before you go anywhere, talk about it and be like, okay,
yeah,
you know, how many times a week do you think this will be feasible for us? Is there a certain day you think we could schedule this so we know, okay, at some point on this Wednesday, we're going to try and have sex at some point. And maybe it's like, it doesn't seem, like you said, like it's not an obvious time of the day where you're like, this is a perfect open window for when we could, you know, be intimate. So yes, like you said, to be adventurous, to think differently. And you might actually find that you love that, like that it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I've been like craving adventure and, you know, almost like a bit of like sneakiness where you're like trying to sneak around and figure out a time for when you can be intimate, but it can be kind of fun in that sense. So if you like think about it in a fun light versus, oh, now we have to try and have sex in my in-laws' house or whatever. But instead thinking it of like, okay, when can we make time for this connection, even when it's like different than normal?
For sure. Yeah, I love that. So we have some fun little ideas we're just going to throw at you guys. These are super practical. Most of these anybody can do. So one of them is just be intentional about connecting physically before anything even gets sexual. Just be intentional about connecting physically. Because we've talked about in the past, you know, how women are more like crock pots and the guys are like microwaves. Like guys are just like ready to go. Typically, I'm not saying always, because everybody's different, but we're generalizing things. Women really appreciate having their love tanks really filled intentionally throughout the day. It just works awesome that way. So getting our minds going throughout the day is a really good idea. So connect physically. You know, if you guys have your own secret little love language, do those things. Like whatever it is that really gets you guys going, that's a really precious gift you can give to each other on a non-sexual level. Do it. Those are great ways to just start things going. And they're innocent enough that you can do them all throughout the day and nobody's going to have any clue except for you guys what's coming next.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and even like you were saying, how we all, like women often, yeah, are like crock pots, you were saying. Something that
Mhm.
comes to mind too is like thinking of each other's love languages and to be able to just like, okay,
Yeah.
so I know if I'm being intentional about, getting the kids ready in the morning and, or speaking words that make my wife feel beautiful or
Mhm.
cherished, like that's going to fill her love tank. So, yeah, being conscious of what helps your spouse feel ready for making love. And like you said, to be
Yeah.
able to sprinkle them throughout the day, holding hands, touching the small of your back, giving each other a kiss, hugging each other. Like, right? Totally things you can do whenever. And it's not like, they're probably thinking about having sex tonight. It's like, no, you're just holding hands. But for the two of you, maybe you're like, okay, we're connecting. And this is one way at least you can fill each other up. And that's, I think,
Yeah.
something you can do even if like maybe intercourse isn't really an option. Like you're staying somewhere where you're all in one room, right? Like you're like staying at a cabin and it's just
Mhm.
like all the beds are together and it's like, oh, crap. Like we really maybe can't have sex because it's not really an option. But
Yeah.
even at least to be able to doing some of these things to
Mhm.
still have a connection with each other, even if
Yes.
it's not
Don't lose
actual
the connection.
intercourse.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Don't lose the connection. So then on that note, like you were just saying, maybe you are staying in a one room place. Lana and I have some ideas for you guys to get a little bit adventurous and make the intimacy happen. So, number one is shower sex. This is a pretty safe bet. You're not going to get caught and everything's going to be fine. I know some couples just prefer not to be like, oh, everyone knows we're going to shower together. So they probably know what's going on. Some people truly do mind about those things.
Right.
Some people really don't give a rip. So you do you, but this is a great thing to use to your advantage, especially if you're in a scenario where you are all sharing a room. So use shower sex to get intimate, and that can also be fun. Do it.
Yeah. Another idea would be in the car. Maybe you like drove up to this place and now you're here and whatever. And you're like, okay, well, crap. Now we can't actually have sex anywhere. But maybe you go for a drive together and then, make time to like have sex in the car.
Yeah.
I, I think that would be a great idea. Like, granted, you're not
Yeah.
like in the middle of the city. It's never fun to walk up to someone's car and you see them having sex in the back. That's only happened to me one time where I saw someone in the back of their car and we're like, oh my gosh, did we just see that? So don't be those people. Go
Don't be
somewhere
that
that no one's gonna
couple.
see
I
you.
mean, like, do be that couple. Just don't get caught.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. But
Oh
like
my gosh.
maybe you've never had car sex before, and this is like, hey, want to try it? Like, I mean, maybe it'd be awkward, and you're like, oh, this doesn't really work. You have a really small car. I don't know, but to just try and troubleshoot and make it happen, and maybe that means going in the back seat. Just
Yeah.
try it.
Regardless, make those memories. Those are going to be fun memories.
Exactly.
Um, Next thing is do have or try having morning sex. So maybe you guys wake up early together and the house is still quiet and you can have that time together alone, which is super awesome. So, before the days gets going and everybody's up and about, set your alarm for like a couple of hours early and be together in the morning. um I think that's something that, it's super simple concept, but how many of us actually sit down and like, hey, like we could do this, like we could make time for this, and then have your day start off that way, which I think is a really precious way to go about that.
Yeah. But even to be mindful of it, where you're like, okay, maybe I'll have to go to bed a little bit early if we want to get up, or yeah, if we want to get up really early. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's just something to be mindful of. And then too, you could always be like, let's get up early and go have shower sex. If you're like uncomfortable with everyone knowing that you're off to like head to the bathroom together,
Yeah,
then you could also
exactly.
just do that in the early morning as well.
Yeah,
Another thing
100%.
that I think would be a fun idea if you don't typically do this is to like wake each other up in the middle of the night when everyone's
Mhm.
like asleep. Just like poke your poke your spouse and maybe like I don't know, maybe talk about it beforehand. So this isn't like totally sprung on you if you're like, why are you
Yeah, go,
waking me right
what's
now?
going
Like,
on?
this is the worst. But like, I don't know. It can be really fun. Just like the middle of the night. It's like 3 in the like. Well, I guess that's morning. I don't know what people consider nighttime, but um, and yeah, and then everything's quiet. It can just be the two of you, and everyone else is asleep. So I feel
Mhm.
like that's like a pretty safe time to do it, where no one will hear you or know what's going on or think weird things. Right? It's like yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, so when I was looking up ideas for this and I was trying to be like, okay, what could be like a fun challenge or doing something you're not used to when it comes to sex when you're somewhere else? And something that came to mind, and this would be like for the ultra adventurous person. But it was like, we're like, hey, we're going to go for a walk. We'll be back in a bit. And so the two of you like go for a walk in the woods. Okay, this is, I'm thinking like if you're somewhere like rural, not like in the middle of the city.
Mhm.
So maybe this is like irrelevant for some. But I was like, man, because I'm thinking of like where my husband's family lives. It's like, no one's around if you're like going for a walk in the woods.
Yeah.
Um, but you just like go for a walk in the woods and just like have sex in the woods somewhere. Like I was like, that'd be
Yeah.
super adventurous. Like, granted, it's like snowy because it's wintertime, but I don't know. I feel like it could be its own challenge. Like, try and make it, I don't know, fun and interesting, and you could have a really great
Yeah.
story afterwards. Be like, hey, we tried to, right?
Yes, 100%. I love that. And then also you could have afternoon delights. So you could just have, your little afternoon fiesta. You're going to have a nap, whatever, but you're actually not going to. That's just your, excuse. And it's your polite way to excuse yourself from a room of people without telling the obvious, right?
Yeah,
But then go and just spend time intimately together, right? Go to your room, spend time intimately together. Like you can absolutely do that. I feel like this is something that is just so not talked about. So
no,
nobody actually really, I shouldn't say nobody, but I think the majority of us don't actually think actively, oh, we could actually just go slip away for 30 minutes and reconnect and be together and then continue on. Like
yeah,
absolutely you can.
and it doesn't have to be like actual intercourse. Like maybe, yeah, you go for a walk and then you go just make out somewhere,
Yeah.
right? Like it doesn't have to be we go and try and have sex in the woods somewhere. Like it doesn't have to be that. It can just be
Right.
you go and you talk, right? And you have that connection, and maybe that's what you need after just being amongst people and having the busyness of that going on. You can just go and talk and kiss and hold hands, or I don't know. And there's something powerful about like a 20-second hug. Just go somewhere and just
Yes.
have a hug and reconnect, and then those like feel good hormones will start going. But
Yeah.
just to be able to have that bonding time as a couple and intentionally, it's just trying to be mindful about when you can make space for each other, even though it's crazy and the like things are busy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think on that note, I want to mention something. If you guys haven't tuned in to Get Your Marriage On, I highly recommend you start following them on Instagram and listen to their podcast. They are just the loveliest couple ever. And they have an epic app that gives you all kinds of ideas for staying connected and building intimacy regardless of where you are and what's going on. Everything from like definitely having full on the whole intimate 3 meal course to just having little delights, between that, making out, whatever it may be. But they have so many great ideas on there. So if you feel like you're kind of in a dry spell or you just don't know what to do, then download that app. No, just download it anyways. They're amazing. But get in because it's definitely going to feed into all of these adventurous ideas and just helping you guys out with creativity.
Mm-hmm. And something too that can be fun, and we kind of mentioned it in the last episode a bit in like regards to like not transition, traditions, not
Mm-hmm.
transitions, traditions. Um, but to be able to, even though it's like a busy, crazy season, to be like, hey, we're gonna go out on a date tonight, or
Mm-hmm.
hey, we think it'd be fun to just go and rent a Airbnb tonight. As like a fun date night thing to do, or
Yes.
um, surprise each other with it, right? So it's like one of you doesn't even know what's going to happen and be like, hey, babe, I surprised us. Like, here you go. We're going to a cabin right now. I don't know. I think to add that spontaneity to it where you could talk about it beforehand, but at the same time, also just be like, hey, I think this would be really fun. And it's a fun way for us to still connect, even though we're in a different city or, you know, we're traveling or we're at your parents' house or whatever, to be like, I want to put you first. And I know that this would fill your cup. And so this is what I did. But what a blessing to be able to bring those things to your spouse. And like we said, it's all about, you know, the season of giving. So giving your spouse a gift of something that you think would really fill them up and bless them and surprise them with it. I think that's like another way you could try and keep this like a fun challenge. It's like, how could you make this like a fun surprise? Granted, don't like surprise them by like waking them up super early, be like, hey, we're having sex now. But when you're being, you know, intentional and like having a gift of something to just bring it to them and be like, hey, I wanted to bless you with this. And I think this would be a fun thing to do. So power to you. Good luck staying intimate throughout this busy season. We're praying that you and your spouse just have so many opportunities to stay connected intimately and just otherwise, emotionally, that you feel together, that you feel unified as a couple throughout the season. And so we just want to bless you with that. And we are excited to hear how everything goes, and Merry Christmas.
Hey friends, thank you so much for hanging out with us as we dive deeper into meaningful, godly intimacy, tackle the hard questions, and embrace truth while we're at it. We're also on Instagram at Kingdom Sexuality. You'll find our Instagram handle below in the show notes, where you'll also see any other resource links we may have mentioned in today's episode. As always, our hearts are to cultivate deep community and freedom with you guys, and we cannot wait to continue this journey alongside you. We'll see you in the next episode.